Okay, so let me get this right. When they first called you, and of course we're talking about, he's active duty Navy. He's getting orders to San Diego, and he was going to get underway as soon as he got here. And then she's veteran, and they're moving down there. They were not talking to you about buying, right? They were talking about renting because the payment was going to be too high for the type of home that they would want down here, right? Tell
That's
me,
true,
tell
Charles.
me.
They reached out to me. I had a listing that I sold earlier this year, and the client asked me to list it for rent. They weren't ready to move. So I had it on the market for rent, and she called off my sign. And honestly, I had seen her information through the Zillow portal. I didn't call her back. She followed up. Anyway, in the conversation, I uncovered that they were really buyers that had gotten frustrated due to a program they were working with another lender and the agent they were working with in San Diego. So they had such a short time frame, they just decided to rent instead of buying.
That's crazy. And so when the conversation, and they were talking to Navy Federal Credit Union, right? They already had their pre-approval done, ready to go. And so when you and I started talking to them, of course, you wanted them to get a second opinion, and that's great. And then that conversation led into, well, and she sounded very frustrated, like, I'm not gonna buy. Payments way too much. I don't want to live in this community. I want to live in this community. That quality of home. And it was going to be, one or the other, right? Were you just going to rent or whatever? And then we got into this conversation about making the payment work without, I don't want to say downgrading, but without dropping the quality of home, right? Tell us how that conversation went.
Well, Charles, I have to tell you, over the years, you're a master at uncovering the true objection because the buyers were discouraged. The market, of course, the market is what it is. The interest rates have been higher, and they're not first-time homeowners. They've lived in Temecula before. They've PCS'd here to California, and they were used to, like you said, a certain lifestyle. They've got kids in school, and they make good money. She actually works for the FAA now, and he's still active duty, like you said, and he's got a pretty decent ranking. And so they have the income, but of course, nobody wants to have $1,000 a month payment almost. So I could tell the payment was what was more uncomfortable for them. But in speaking to you, somehow you opened this whole can of worms about trying to find a solution to make the payment more palatable, which is when you introduce them to the temporary rate buy down. And to be honest, that was the clincher because she has said to me over and over again, even throughout the transaction after we started moving forward, she said, no one in all of this time has ever given me that option. So yeah, that was it. And then their price point went up. They were actually able to buy in a community that they really wanted, and the payment was very reasonable.
It was. I will never forget that conversation because when me and Erin were on the phone talking to us, hey, have you considered a temporary buy down? And she was like, wait, what is that? What language is that, right? And of course, bless their hearts, we're not here to bash Navy Federal, but they didn't offer that as an option. I don't think they actually have that as an option, period. It wasn't just that they didn't mention that to this particular veteran. They just don't offer 2-1 temp buy downs, at least at this time. And the beautiful thing about it was like, we concluded that the payment was the issue. And if we could get the payment down, at least for a while, they felt pretty comfortable moving forward because over time his rank was going to go up, his income was going to go up, her disability rating with VA would go up, and so they'd be able to eventually make the payment. So let's explain how that works. If you guys are watching this and you're not familiar with how the 2-1 temp buy down works, the interest rate on the VA loan is fixed for the whole 30 years. I mean, you got that, right? You figured that out at the beginning. We're not talking about an adjustable rate mortgage. We're talking about a rate that's fixed for the whole 30 years. However, for a period of, in this case, 2 years, we were able to buy down the payment, right? We don't really want to say buy down the interest rate because the rate on the loan stays the same, but we put money aside to get that payment down for the first 24 months. Now, how did that conversation go with the listing agent? I'm not going to bring her into this conversation, but how did that conversation go with you and the listing agent? Say, hey, we need all this money from you, your seller, right? It was a hot property. We need all this money from the seller to make this work for this veteran. How did that conversation go?
The whole thing was just divine, to be honest, because this property was actually just listed when I found it, because they were kind of specific about the needs that they had. And again, part of the discouragement of buying is they weren't seeing what they wanted. They weren't in the right price point because of payment. And when you were able to get them into a lower payment with the program, it opened up the price point. So I just kind of started looking. You put them on a drip, but you also do your part as an agent and look. And there was one listing, it had just a front photo. There was no interior pictures. but I saw the listing agent was a friend of mine. And she sent me videos that she had. And so I sent it to the buyer. The buyers are like stoked. They're like, this is beautiful. Let us get in there. So that weekend, she let me in after the photos were live and everything. And they're like, yeah, this is the right home. So I had the rapport with her, is my point, is that she was already kind of working behind the scenes to help accommodate my buyers. She knew they were out of state. She totally understood the situation. So for the credit, we were able to position ourselves in a price point that was comfortable for them, but she really advocated for us to her seller to get that credit. So that's another thing, is the layer of rapport, that you have with other people. Sometimes that can really help in negotiation.
And it was not an easy conversation to have, because you were asking for a good chunk of change for the closing costs. As a matter of fact, again, we're not going to give away the client's identity and the actual interest rate, because this whole deal happened a few months ago in late summer of 2025. We're recording this at the end. So the interest, I don't really even want to quote an interest rate, because people are going to watch this 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, and the interest rate that we quote, right now might not be relevant at that time, right? So I'm just going to make up an interest rate. Let's just make it up as 6%, right? So if the 30-year fixed VA loan interest rate was 6%, let me just show this on the screen, right? And so say the monthly payment associated with that was, and what was the purchase price? It was $815,000, wasn't it? $815,000, I believe, was the purchase price. Okay, so the payment the first year would be 2%. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. The payment the first 12 months would be based on an interest rate that was 2% lower than the 30-year fixed interest rate. So if we're going to make up an interest rate and say it was 6% at the time, right, their payment the first 12 months would have been based on a 4%. And that meant that in order to make up the difference, because remember, the lender is going to get the same interest throughout the life of the loan, right? Their interest is not going to drop on account of this. They're still going to get the same money. So what needed to happen is there needed to be $995 a month worth of decrease. In other words, it was $11,945,000 that you had to go find, right? And what happens is on a temp buy down, that money gets put aside, it gets held in an account by the lender, and they supplement the payment the veteran's making, right? The veteran's making this payment, and then it's supplemented by the money that's taken from this account. But this money is set aside at the beginning, and it was $11,945 just for the first 12 months. And then the second year, beginning with month number 13, there was going to have to be a decrease of $511 a month, which over a 12-month period, $6,135. So between the two, right, to make that payment work for them over the first 24 months, it was going to cost $18,000 and some change, which then you went and negotiated as a seller credit from the seller. How did that conversation go with that listing agent?
Well, we structured it the right way. It was reasonable. I mean, obviously it wasn't top dollar, but what I thought was so awesome is we were able to do that before the property was fully exposed. I mean, it was available, it was active, but we got in there right away. So I think a lot of it had to do with timing too, Charles. She knew she had a ready, willing, able to buy person on the other end. And then the buyers also had a short time to move. So this was a quick escrow. So I think positioning ourselves in timing, and then also I brought you into the equation. She was familiar with you as a lender. She knows you specialize in VA transactions. So I think her comfort level with me as a friend, you as a lender, and then the situation just really fit the seller's need. He had already moved out of the property. It's like, why pay another mortgage? Let's get this thing closed, get us the credit, and everybody can win at the end of the day. And that's all.
I think an amazing thing here is that we were willing to do something creative, right? Go outside the norm, think outside the box. Nothing shady, nothing fraudulent, nothing misrepresentative. It was just something that it was not talked about, right? And look what happened. We got these guys into a home in a beautiful neighborhood. I mean, I saw the appraisal. I was like, wow, this is a beautiful home. And now they're on the path to, and the thing is, a lot of times I get this question, well, hey, what happens at the end of that 24 months? The payment's going to go back up to what it should have been, right? And well, hey, in those 24 months, right, you might have an opportunity to refinance refinance and drop that interest rate. And you know how VA IRRRLs work, right? With an IRRRL, you don't have to show an appraisal or have a full-on credit pull or show any income documents. And so there's always options, right? And they recognized that. They were smart enough, the veterans, to recognize, look, this is a 2-year gig. We're going to be able to get into a home with a payment that's affordable in a beautiful neighborhood that we like, and we'll just deal with it as to what happens 2 years from now, and we're going to have plenty of opportunity to make that payment, on account of the rates dropping, us refinancing, and or our incomes are going to go up, right? And it just so happens that she's on VA disability, and we've historically seen disability incomes go up every January, right? We knew that going in. It's going to go up here in about a month. And active duty base pay goes up, BAH goes up, BAS goes up. So it was not a reckless thing for us to do, was it?
No, I think, and the other thing of it is the husband and wife are both savvy, but the wife is very savvy. I watched her do a lot throughout the transaction remotely. Like, she was dialed into the home inspection. She was dialed into the features of the home. She really paid attention to the calculations. She would even call me to go over disclosures with her. So she was very dialed in, and that's just who she is as a person. So she knows the risk involved, but it was very calculated risk and very low barrier, as far as the risk level, because like you said, the income is there. They could totally afford the home. I think it was just comfortability with the payment at the time because interest rates are a little bit higher than normal.
Yeah. Hey, in closing, why do you enjoy working with why are you so passionate about VA buyers?
I love the military. I mean, it's an honor thing for me. These are people that have dedicated themselves to serve our country, to protect our freedoms, and they deserve this benefit. And in real estate, that's the quickest way for them to make income as far as, increasing their wealth and building a life for them and their families, especially those that are sitting behind as they're out serving and doing other things. Or if they're a veteran, that's the quickest and the easiest way for them to appreciate their assets. So I think it's awesome. The programs are available, and I just want to get the word out every chance I can.
Yeah, I tell you. And in closing, I got to tell you, there were a couple of nights I didn't sleep too good thinking, oh my God, there's a lot of moving parts in this deal, right? He's about to go underway. He's going to probably not be accessible very much out there. And then, she's relocating from up in Washington. The listing agent, as I recall, wanted a fairly quick closing. There was a lot of moving parts, but you handled it like a rock star. You handled it really well, all these moving parts.
Thank you, Charles. You were very helpful. Your team is great. So it was easy.
Hey, let's do another one. You have a great day, and your contact information is on the screen. And if you guys are watching this, you're a military buyer or any kind of buyer for that matter, get a hold of Melody. She is all heart and soul when it comes to representing you. And you got some more room for some buyers or what?
I do, Charles. Let's do this. 2026 is on.
All right. We'll see you on the next one. You take care. Have a great day, and God bless you.
You too. Goodbye.